Hello, everyone, and thank you for visiting Leezah's Lair, the channel for the older adults who are in the virtual world of Second Life. I'm glad that you stopped by. I usually cover on this channel discussion topics. Occasionally, I cover events. I go to the event and I show you the booths at the event and I click on group gifts and things like that. But this is mainly a topical channel. I've covered the American Cancer Society's campaign. I've gone to Nonprofit Commons and showed you their sim and where they have their meetings. So, one topic that I wanted to cover today is on the Black Lives Matter movement, and it is happening in Second Life also. What I would like to do is I want to start out by talking about some of the falsehoods that are perpetuated surrounding the Black Lives Matter movement. One of the falsehoods that is being perpetuated is the notion that the Black Lives Matter movement is anti-police. There is actually no statement whatsoever on their website or on any other official correspondence stating that they are against police, that they are against law enforcement. What the Black Lives Matter movement is against is police abuse of power, police misconduct, murder of unarmed citizens, particularly the Black citizens who are unarmed, police using violent and aggressive tactics when people are calmly asking, why am I being stopped? Why am I being detained? They have a right to ask these questions, and that doesn't mean that they get to throw you on the ground, trap you down, and then say that you were resisting arrest when you were initiating a conversation. This happens a lot. It has also been recorded that it is happening, that the police suddenly become aggressive when they're questioned about, why am I being asked these questions? What is the situation? People have a right as American citizens to ask for clarification. So I just wanted to point that out because often that is the conversation that happens. People want to blame the American citizen who was asking police, why am I even being stopped? Why am I even being questioned? What is this all about? And people want to blame that person for everything that happens next. Another falsehood that often occurs is that people often say, oh, well, I thought that that person had a weapon when that person moved their arm or put their hand in their pocket or something like that. And that's why we use lethal force and just killed them. Don't just fire away saying, well, I thought that that person was doing anything. All you do is tell them, stop what you're put your hand in the air, I see you going for your pocket. And then if they do not comply with you, then you should still have another mode of attack other than putting a gun to their head, because you can subdue somebody by shooting them in the leg. You can subdue somebody by shooting them in the arm. You don't have to aim at their head and kill them on the spot and then say, oh, that person was reaching in their pocket. I thought it was a gun. Oopsies. That's not appropriate. And I think that, these types of instances have happened and they should be addressed. They should be very vocally questioned and condemned. Another thing that often happens when some of these situations have occurred is that people will say, oh, well, when they check that person's record who is now dead because of police abuse of power, they'll say, oh, well, that person had a criminal record. Well, obviously that person was not wanted and had a criminal record. So that's different. If you are wanted and the police have, found you and now they're acting very urgently to apprehend you, that's one thing. If you have a criminal record, if you have served your time to society, if you have fulfilled the obligations of whatever punishment was enacted upon you by the court, then your case is closed. And yes, you do have a record, but that doesn't mean that anytime the police happen to see you somewhere, they should suddenly get aggressive with you and start talking to you disrespectfully and start treating you as if, oh, that person has a weapon because this person served time at one time and is now released and is now free to go. So I don't think that that is a justifiable response when somebody says, oh, well, that person had a record. Was that person wanted at the time that the police approached them? Were they wanted for a crime at that time? That's what needs to be asked. And if the answer is no, that person has a police record and paid their debt to society, then that still doesn't justify anything in terms of that person now being disrespected wherever they happen to be, out in the street or in their own yard. People have been arrested in their own yard because the police are saying, oh, well, somebody called the police on you because you were standing in your yard and they thought it wasn't your home. Well, the police should be questioning that person. Why did you call the police on somebody saying, well, oh, I didn't know if that was that person's home? Well, then why are you calling the police on that person? I don't know all of the neighbors on my street, but if I'm driving down my street and I happen to see somebody in a yard, I don't have the right to just call the police and start making an excuse due to discrimination and prejudging other people by saying, oh, somebody suspicious is standing in this yard at such and such address. They're standing in the yard. That's none of your business. Do they have something in their hand and they're breaking a window? Okay, now, yes, that would be something suspicious to happen in the neighborhood. But just somebody standing in their yard, mowing their lawn, sitting down, standing in your yard is not suspicious. An adult standing on the lawn is not anything suspicious at all. Now, if that person is breaking a window, breaking a door, kicking something down, acting strangely when you're driving by, like trying to run and hide behind a bush. Okay, well, now that's suspicious. But that's not what is happening in some of these situations. There was a woman who was actually killed in her own house, and the neighbor called the police saying, oh, it's 2 o'clock in the morning and her door is wide open. And so then the police show up. She's in her house and they fire from outside of the house, killing her. They did not say on, a bullhorn, ma'am, will you please step out of the house? Ma'am, are you okay? They didn't do any of that at all. They just shot her from outside of her own home. And so when you talk about the Black Lives Matter movement and you try to create all of these other falsehoods, I think that that is really taking away from what this movement is trying to address. And if you are addressing wrongdoing, that doesn't mean that you are against the entire profession. I personally am against wrongdoing in the public schools with teachers. I'm against wrongdoing in the banking profession with people who are handling things based on racial discrimination and profiling, such as calling the police because you think that somebody's has stolen the money because they have a certain level of a deposit. That happened to a man. He had a very large paycheck. He had his ID. The name was on his paycheck, and they called the police. Things like that. I'm against wrongdoing. That doesn't mean I'm against the profession. And so I think that too many people are starting to convolute these conversations and turn it into something that it is not. And I think we should talk about that. The other thing that I think is important is when people say, oh, if you say Black Lives Matter, well, all lives matter. Well, that doesn't mean that if I say my life matters, that I'm saying yours doesn't. So again, don't try to create another conversation that we're not having. There's no problem with focusing on one issue. If I decide to discuss one issue, that doesn't mean that I'm saying that there's not other issues. It means that I'm talking about what I'm talking about. And so I think that people try to shut down the Black Lives Matter movement by saying, oh, well, there's other issues. So does that mean that nobody in Second Life should have a campaign about breast cancer because there's other cancers out there? Is that what we're saying? That doesn't make any sense, and it's kind of stupid. So we shouldn't talk about clean water in certain African countries because there's other issues in those countries. I mean, the whole premise of just saying that really is silly to me. People can focus on one issue. You can have a campaign that just addresses one issue. You don't have to invalidate somebody's campaign just because it's a one issue campaign. Remember Mothers Against Drunk Driving? Was anybody saying, oh, nope, nope, drunk driving affects more than just mothers. Nope, nope. Nobody was saying that when Mothers Against Drunk Driving came out with their campaign. Oh, but if Black Lives Matter comes out talking about, police misconduct, particularly to one group of people, then suddenly they want to invalidate that by saying, oh, no, all lives matter. Nope, nope. And that's just wrong because you weren't saying that when Mothers Against Drunk Driving came out and they were just focusing on a single issue. You weren't saying that about breast cancer. Oh, no, no, there's other cancers. Why are you just talking about breast cancer? You weren't saying that about that. Um, you know, Alzheimer's. Nope, nope. There's other neurological diseases. Nobody is saying that about these other campaigns that focus on one issue. So I think we need to discuss why suddenly it's a problem if there's a campaign that does focus on this one issue. I also want to talk about the whole issue where people are talking about looting and rioting. Again, you're trying to take away from the actual conversation. If I start a campaign in Second Life and other Second Life residents show up and they're grieving and they're doing this or that, that doesn't mean that I invited them. And if those griefers are saying, "Oh, well, we're supporting her," that doesn't mean I have anything to do with those people. So trying to attach somebody's campaign with what other random people do when they show up at events isn't fair. And it really is also just a way of trying to distract from the real conversations that are happening because, a leader of a campaign has nothing to do with people who show up at a rally. If that person plans an event, I have events in Second Life, and sometimes people just show up at my events who I don't even know. Of course, I can eject them, but my whole point is that away from virtual spaces, you can have an event and anybody can show up doing whatever they want and they can say, "Oh, I'm doing this because I'm supporting her." Well, no, you're just a griefer. That's what you're doing. And so I just think for people to act like you're so confused that certain people are out there doing whatever they want and then saying that they're part of the Black Lives Matter movement. The fact that, many people out there are acting, oh, like, oh, they're so confused. Why are they part of this movement and doing that? Well, who says they are? Just because they say that they are. Who says that the campaign even knows those people, has ever communicated with those people? I'm sure they haven't. So I don't want to make this video too long, but I wanted to point out just those key things because there is a Black Lives Matter movement in Second Life. There could potentially be griefers showing up at whatever events are happening and just being disruptive, just like what we're seeing is happening away from virtual spaces. So I wanted to point that out as well. Don't try to make people who are starting a campaign responsible for the actions of everybody who happens to attend. Yes, in Second Life, we can eject people. However, away from virtual spaces, you don't get to click a button and then everybody is compliant. That just doesn't work that way. So keep that in mind and let's have a conversation in the comment section. Let's continue this discussion. As I said, it's nothing new for my channel to have these types of conversations. And I hope that you'll continue to visit Lisa's Lair and put your comments below if there's other topics, other happenings on the grid that you'd like for me to cover.